do not invest in NIO in case you don't like NIO houses, NIO life, and all of the sorts of ecosystem that NIO is building. I'm getting the comment quite frequently around that NIO is burning too much money, NIO has a very complex lineup of cars, NIO is building NIO houses, NIO is serving coffee, all of that. What I think really makes NIO NIO and different from all of the other car brands. And I think the main message here, I would say, would be that if you are investing in NIO, you're really backing the founder's vision, which is the vision by Li Bin. And he, of course, owns the largest stake in this company and, well, is not a simple CEO in terms of what you would see at Volkswagen or any other car company, which is appointing CEOs, not rather his company or the company of his co-founders and himself, and they are following a certain vision that they have set out for the next couple of years or decades to come. So the difficulty, of course, is with that the vision may never unfold in the way that they have envisioned it. And this is, of course, one of the risks involved in companies like NIO or in any growth company and startups in particular. And of course, all of these questions that we're now hearing, like questioning the vision and what's going on with NIO, certainly they are, coming up, especially during times when the company is not doing well, or in this case, the stock is actually depressed from its recent highs, right? Now, of course, it's making sense that you're trying, or that anybody is trying to find reasons why the company is not succeeding in the way currently, or what should change. So I think some sort of constructive feedback is certainly a good thing. However, I think there are way too many people, frankly, in NIO stock that have invested in NIO because they thought it's the Tesla of China, which it clearly is not. And therefore, we have a totally different positioning of the company, which is becoming really clear now. And at the time when Tesla is reducing their prices and going more in the mass market segment, and NIO clearly is not doing that. So this is just one of the little examples of how these companies are different. But what I really want to say here is that the big investors backing NIO, like for example Baillie Gifford, if you go back to their prospectus where they outlined their vision of NIO, they really said like, we're backing this company and seeing this huge upside potential in the company. But of course, we could be wrong in certain areas. And one of them has also been around NIO houses, for example, which they said might be, just a fad and people are not really accepting it. Now, if you watch this channel for a longer time, you see that I personally have also been a little bit skeptical around the success of NIO houses, because frankly, before in the first years when I invested in NIO, and I've been to NIO houses in China before, then I saw that they have been quite empty in the past as well. So I did have my doubts around it, but then you also saw possibly my video when I went back to China and saw how NIO houses were really a place like Li Bin has really envisioned them. And so, this is kind of a thing that sometimes takes a little bit of time. I think, for example, also for the German NIO houses, they're nowhere near. And actually, in fact, I made a video in my Patreon community only about my personal experiences of how I think NIO houses in Germany, the Berlin house, is still quite different from the NIO in China. And that has to do with some sort of what's new and stuff, and how it's going to be a different concept in the West than in the East, possibly. But overall, my experience of not going back to China for 3 years during the pandemic and now seeing this difference in NIO houses to how it was before, that was really eye-opening and shows me at this point in time, at least, that these houses are not a fad in a way that they are sometimes perceived here by, frankly, mostly Western investors that want to see usually NIO follow just a straight path of a Tesla, which once again I think is not the right thing to characterize NIO. So Another thing, how I'm personally watching NIO houses is, first of all, in my point of view, they are marketing. So they are not only a place for a community, which sounds nice, and to shape a better lifestyle and a joyful lifestyle. That's something that NIO is usually saying. Instead, I think NIO houses are usually located at quite smart areas in cities. Some of them are frankly also not located at a smart area and have not enough traction. However, the first thing that they are doing is they're actually giving brand exposure to NIO, and more importantly, a certain type of brand exposure, which is really premium to luxury, because it's also a fresh new concept and very high in the perception of a new person. And it's usually creating the first touch point where a user is really getting the interest of the brand in the first time. And so it's already there. It's creating a differentiation to what's already in the market, or what really people have with other car brands, right? And so this is actually nice to have, but not really what investors like to see, right? Because investors want to see future cash flow. And I do think NIO houses pay into that, into the future cash flows in various ways. For example, in the future, I think NIO houses will be part of this larger ecosystem that will be greater monetized. And I've spoken to a couple of NIO users in China this time, and also some people closer to NIO who really said like NIO is very different in a way of what these houses are creating. But of course, this is like very intangible, if you will. It's not how do you put a value at this for NIO stock or the company? I think that's what investors really are struggling right now still, because it's not really it cannot be seen, not in the sales, because the sales are really still in the emerging stage and recently have not been doing so great for various reasons discussed in my videos, but some people trying to attribute that to, for example, the strategy of building out NIO houses or other infrastructure projects which require large investments and R&D. So I think that's a little bit short-sighted, because I think there are real metrics behind NIO houses, like with the traction that they're getting with, for example, in Berlin, when it's right besides a big Christmas market, which is happening once a year. And this house has been flooded with people during that time the Christmas market was open. So what it's really doing is this house is also buying impressions, and not only impressions by people firsthand, but also a chatter about it. So, it's spreading the word, it's creating mouth to mouth. And that's not only by people who go in there, but also by people who are part of the events. So it's funny because I just actually the other day I was running here, and with another person who's following this running influencer who recently had a talk at the NIO house in Berlin. And I wasn't even aware of it, but just the fact that this new person, this person who doesn't care about NIO or NIO cars, had this experience of seeing an impression about NIO, but in the area of running, tells me that this concept already in Germany is going the right way, or at least creating interesting interactions here between potential users, or at least some sort of a brand building. Because imagine all of those people who are going to such NIO events locally, or later on hear about it, for example, in social media. This running influencer possibly has done a post about the fact that she has been giving this talk at the NIO house in Berlin, and that's where my friend noticed it. This is sort of the real marketing exposure that people are not really thinking about when first thinking about how NIO houses are actually working. They just think it's a place where you can go and get a free coffee, right? And in fact, some of the coffees are free, but mostly they are not if you're not having enough NIO points, which means that you already have some sort of a buy-in into the NIO ecosystem, which is basically running on its own currency, which are NIO points. And that is for another video how this all of this works and what NIO really makes distinct as a platform business, in my point of view, in contrast to a more streamlined pipeline business, in which I would characterize most of the other car brands in. But anyways, this is just a sort of, first angle of thinking about NIO houses, how they're actually part of contributing of a later success of turning people into paying customers. Of course, at some point in time, hopefully owning a car and then also becoming a user in the NIO house, or somebody who may attend some of the events or goes there for other reasons. I've pointed out in China that people went there for leisure, for meeting friends, for having discussions, for partaking at events, for going there for remote work, many other ways you could think of that NIO houses are being used. And frankly, some of them are not really using it. So I spoke to some NIO users who actually have never participated in events, or they just care about the cars. Well, this is still possible, but in my point of view, this doesn't really, make NIO houses a useless exercise or something that shouldn't be part of this vision. So the overall message here, once again, is just like, the founders of this company have a differentiation and a different vision in their minds of how they see the future of this company and how actually the business model is supposed to work. I think it's not very helpful if people say NIO should change all of that in order to just churn out cars, because that essentially means that NIO would become a different company. And I would say in that case, if you are really thinking like that, you should possibly not invest in the company, because essentially you are backing either division, and that might turn out well or it doesn't turn out well. But on the other hand, if you are looking for something else, then really you're looking for a different company, I would say. So in my point of view, I'm rather staying here on the skeptical side and trying to assert with my personal visits to those houses how things are going. I'm trying to see whether or not they can kick off this word-to-mouth aspect even more, how they are trying to monetize all of that in the future. And frankly, I do see many ways how this is possible. And although I don't like the cash burn itself, of course, I'm not happy about negative quarters over time. But, and I guess I will make a second video on that, you should also question whether or not now is the right time to invest in growth strategies or new infrastructure, or should this be simply delayed just because of the pressure of shareholders, or because of the markets are not doing well? Well, I think you already, from how I'm asking this question, you might actually sense my sort of answer to this. Anyways, this was just one of the quick replies to some of these discussions that I'm seeing popping up, especially when share prices are down or things are not working the way they should be on a superficial level, actually, because my first insight from being in China actually told me an opposite story, and I rather see the potential in it for the long run. And I think this will be a very difficult mode to copy by others in the future if it's being successful. Of course, NIO at some point in time needs to turn around the finances and break even, but that was always the case. And I think there is a realistic path for it. Whether or not they will be able to execute on it, that's a different story. So let me know your point of view as of now today. Do you back the vision of the founders here or not? Let me know more arguments. Maybe I'll do a second video on that one. I think I'm trying to keep it a little bit shorter this time. It's already a lot, 14 minutes now. So thanks for watching and see you in my next video.